Welcome to episode 35 of the Calligram podcast. I'm here with Mr. Jack Murphy.
Hello, everybody.
He's up from Melbourne, so happy to have you on board, Jackie.
Not just up from Melbourne. I live in Brisbane now.
Well, there we go. Permanently up
I'm
from
back
Melbourne.
on the attack.
He's back.
That's right. My name is Jack.
That's it. Oh, yeah. And don't forget it. It's an Izac Broderick's here. That's me. And Noah Jeremetta, you're here also.
I'm also here as well. I moved up recently from Melbourne.
That's
So I've been there every episode. You guys just haven't worked it out
Yeah.
yet.
He's been putting in a lot of effort flying up.
Yeah, Jackson
recording.
does an awesome Noah impression.
It's true.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay, so we are today, while the sun is going down, to talk about Aftersun, Charlotte Wells film starring Paul Mescal. We're all fairly fond of the film. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, we should say we talked about this like for 10 minutes before, because Izac brought it up and said, you need to watch this movie.
Oh yeah, while we were talking about Banshees.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've touched on it. At that time, Noah hadn't seen the film, and Jack wasn't here. I don't even think Jack was in the state, actually, when we recorded that. So we've all seen the film. We've all done a little bit of light research on it, and we're keen to explore it and figure out
Talk about why we
what
like
comes
it.
from where and why we like it. Yeah, exactly. Beautiful. So, Jack, how do you feel about Aftersun?
I loved it.
Yeah.
I rewatched it on Friday. It's Sunday now, and I watched it in the cinema when it came out. The second watch wasn't what I thought it would be. I thought I'd be much more invested in it because it's such an emotional story. But rewatching it really honed in why I like it. It's because it's like a really good actor's script. And I was just
right.
making notes to myself of thoughts I have or I would have made if I was like in the film myself. I think a lot of films I gravitate towards fill that niche for me. It's like, oh, I love doing the work. I like seeing the work done like that. That's what I would like to do. I just love small, intimate films like that. You know, exploring people at like traumatic points in their lives and interesting crossroads. And it's just so nice. Also, Turkey looks gorgeous.
Yeah. Something that you said in our Calligram group chat as well that I really liked is we were talking about Aftersun and you said this is exactly the kind of thing that I'd love for Calligram to have on their resume. Something of
Absolutely.
this scale, obviously this kind of quality.
Yeah, the quality's really good.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Yeah.
I watched 1.5 of Charlotte Wells' short films that she made when she was at London Film School of some kind. They're really good. I think they had pretty good budgets behind them. You know, like indie short.
A little different to the GFS shorts, maybe.
And like they're really high quality.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, she's been a great filmmaker for some time now. I lost where I was going with that point.
Beautiful. No, I love it. Noah, how did you feel Aftersun?
It was really good. I'm going to annoy a lot of people on this episode, because I'm not like as in love with it as it seems to be like the unanimous vote about it.
Let it rip. I'm curious to see your, like, I guess dissent is a strong word, but like, I don't know, I want to hear what didn't work as well for you.
Sure.
I think I definitely zero in on like certain things that I just like, and then
Yeah.
if I can walk away from seeing a film and just have that, I'm like, good.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm as critical as you guys on the whole
Okay.
watching films because like I haven't studied film.
Gotcha.
I think we watched, I put 3 Days to Kill on for you.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought it was a pretty hilarious Kevin Costner, like, dad porn revenge film, you know, like, but you guys were like,
Hilarious in a sense that it was actually a good film to you, or...
no, it's terrible.
Oh, okay.
I love it because it's terrible, but, like, the stuff you guys were specifically
pulling
shitting
out,
on.
yeah.
Right.
I was like,
while
that's
we
right.
were shooting Bloom as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
we're
yeah, we
literally
did watch that on set.
on the set.
Oh, yeah, I remember. Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's right, my friends are filmmakers. They
And
have,
arseholes.
like, arseholes. They have an amount of, like, film literacy
Yeah.
that comes through. I forget about that sometimes.
No, very fair. It came through. We were watching. No, hold on. We'll move on. I was going to talk about the fucking Hunter Biden movie, but I'm just going to leave that out.
No,
I don't
no.
care about Seven.
That's
I don't want to give him a second of light.
No, yeah, fair
that is Patreon content.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree. Like Noah, we've had this series of reviewing new films, and we
Yeah.
just gush over every single one. So
Yeah, but I think we've
let's-
deliberately picked stuff that we
really like. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Like
We'll-
when I go to Banshees, I'm like, and I have like 2 problems with the film maybe.
Yeah.
I'm not about to like sit here and be like, The
And
fire
these are
on the
the-
roof looked a little bit like animated fire
Yeah, right.
and shit like this.
The fire did look a bit shit.
You know what I mean?
Just
It's
a
things
bit,
like
yeah.
that. But overall, it's not like a thing that I want to like point out. And
Mm.
also, like when it comes to something that's that good, which is just like this is a really good film. Like I don't want to be like, I'm just not in the boat of thinking it's like a great film or like some
Yep.
really extraordinary experience that everybody else seemed to get out of it. If I'm gonna say like I liked it this much, it doesn't mean that I like loved it that much, and it might not even be like this is one of those movies where it was like I don't have overtly huge problems with the filmmaking that is being done. It's not like there are huge mistakes in a film. Like sometimes you watch things and you go like that whole scene didn't work because of this, or that was out of focus, or this is like I don't think that there was really much in this film at all that I would say was like technically badly done. Like mostly technically it was pretty proficient. Like, it was just like it was really good, but nothing really stepped it up to like being extraordinary. I'll say like the best thing to me about it were the performances.
Mhm.
I think like Paul Mescal was awesome. I think he was really, really, really great. He was the main thing keeping me going, where I was like, I really, really like what he's doing. I think he's really compelling. This is one of those movies where it's like, I'm going to be pretentious, where it like feels European, and you watch it and like
Ooh.
none of the acting is like visible acting, like American acting. You watch all the performances and you're like, they just rolled the camera while two people were talking, and there was like no... What did I fuck up?
Oh, nothing. I was just saying,
Sorry.
should you want to name drop?
Oh,
Yeah, we
I,
should.
I didn't know her
we
name.
should.
I knew her name was...
It's a Frankie Corio.
I didn't know
Yeah.
She
Corio.
plays
I knew it was
Sophie.
very
Okay.
cool.
She was especially good. I did read this morning that this was her first
Yeah.
role.
Yeah, it was her first film, yeah.
Fucking hate that little.
I know.
She's amazing.
And
in it,
like
yeah.
was not pursuing acting
No.
at the time.
Yeah.
But it's yeah, she did an outstanding job to, it's not a huge performance, there's not a lot bubbling under the surface like there is for Paul Mescal's character, but her ability to bring the authenticity to like having fun on the holiday, arguing with her dad, scenes where she sort of voices that she can tell her dad is like upset, or like she gives him shit for being poor. Like those scenes were like, so good, and so like no visible acting.
It's very like naturalistic acting. I think I made a comment on this podcast like a year ago or something about a movie called Compartment Number 6, which was like a European film, which is like everybody just talking on a train for like an hour and a half. And it's the same sort of acting. It's just like, oh, they're just people talking on a train and you rolled. It's basically like a documentary type filmmaking experience where you just watch it and you're like, yeah, everybody acted so well that everything was seamless. It's that sort of a performance. Whereas like a lot of films, you're like, you can tell like, oh, they said that line 50 times and they said it, the director made them say it maybe, or they did it themselves in a specific way to like have a certain feel to the line. And there's like no, like doesn't feel like there's any like intent behind how people are saying things here. It's just all like as realistic and as natural as it could possibly be, sort of a thing.
Aside from like some specific arguments and like line drops that sort of references pieces of like their backstory, it's not a very like script driven story in a like this happened and that happened.
Yeah.
This is probably why it feels more European. It's quite more tonal and an exploration of like memory and coming of age.
Yeah. It's very much going for more of a emotionally driven and tonally driven rather than being like narratively driven where the story is the thing that's like, I want to know what happens next. It's like never in any scene in this movie I'm like, oh, and what's going to happen next? It's like there's tension there, but the tension is kind of like trying to work out what the dad's deal is. That's at least what I felt when I was watching it. And so it was just like, we're going to get little pieces of info here and we're going to have to weed it out. And like when you reach like an hour and a bit through the movie, you're like, okay, they're not going to tell me. Sort of a thing. So it's like all these pieces I've been putting together. It's like, I'm glad I've been paying this much attention so far. Because it's a movie that will reward you if you pay attention to it.
Yes.
Which is like, all the best scripts are the ones where not only do they reward you on rewatch, but they reward you for paying attention. You'll get more out of it if you are more closely thinking about like, oh, he's diving to the bottom of an ocean to grab a mask. Why? Why did he lie about the fact that he didn't have a diving license, but he would go anyway? It's like, well, there's multiple reasons he could have done that. And then you go to the end and you're like, okay, now the multiple reasons are, maybe there's still 2 or 3, but it's not like up in the air anymore, sort of a thing. So that's like, that was well done.
Yeah, I think it works well because it's kind of, it's an exploration of like a personal experience. I wouldn't say the film is like about memory, but like these are memories of the adult Sophie.
Yeah.
So, this consistent tone and just sort of going through this holiday pretty much chronologically.
Yeah.
It just, these things happen and they sort of, I think that's what I like about the script. It's quite linear, but it still sort of has escalation, these bits, and you're sitting there paying attention and who these characters are fill in as you go.
Yep.
I think that's why it's such a rewarding watch and why the end, like I was so sucked in to like this story as a whole. And on my rewatch too, it just,
And that approach of like not being so narratively driven is sometimes more appropriate for memory-based stuff because you only remember certain things from a holiday that stand out.
And then
So
it
just makes
becomes
sense.
about telling you,
Yeah.
and this is like a showing film.
Yes.
Which is why my great praise of the script.
Yeah.
It really shows you and, it tells you lots. Like I made
Tons
2
of
pages of notes here, and
Yeah.
a lot of them were like, I asked myself questions, and then later I got answers, and just bits and pieces that fill in who these people are and how they relate to each other. How the daughter feels about the mother. I was like, oh, there's nice little nuggets in there.
Yeah.
And that's why I loved it, because that's what I want when I read a script.
Right.
Like, there's the question of like who this person is and where they're going, but like when they're at a crossroads, like I think it's Callum, Paul Mescal's Callum.
Yeah, Callum.
He's at a crossroads, and like, how does he feel at that point, and how did he get to this point? The film doesn't really tell you, but like, it gives you some big hints.
Yeah.
If you're paying attention.
Yeah.
And that's what I, love to sift through and find those things and then fill in the rest. And then to see Paul Mescal do such a great job with it was like, I would like this role, but you did it, and now I get to watch you do it, and that's beautiful.
I've seen a lot of like talk in the press of everything, and I think I've even heard the director say that like the film's all like told through memory. And then I sat there and was like, well, it's not all of it, because there are scenes that are made up or fantasized.
I'll go back and forth with you on this one.
And a lot of those scenes where he's just himself walking around and stuff, and it's not, I mean, she's not present in any of those, so I have to imagine that that's the older version of her in her bed, like when she wakes up thinking about, and then what might have he done that night, sort of a thing. Which I actually really like, the fact that there's that other reality spliced in there of like, because that is almost in a way an admittance of the idea that your memory isn't accurate.
Yeah.
And that if she's making pieces up like that, then how many of the other pieces are so accurate? Because you've got to be thinking like, oh, I was 11. Like how accurate was my memory, sort of a thing,
I think I like that it's not more literally like no delineation between what she actually saw and like where like they stop seeing each other. Like when he goes swimming, that's obviously, she has no idea what he did. Or like one of my favorite bits, he's walking down the road and he picks up someone else's cigarette butt. She didn't fucking see that.
Yeah.
But like, I think if it sort of showed you or told you that was like, oh, she's not remembering this, she's imagining it, I think I would have disliked that more than, like, I'm comfortable for Charlotte Wells to say it's all memory.
Yeah.
But and it not being 100% literal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like you said, memory isn't. I think a lot of people forget that memory is completely subjective.
Yeah. If I was put on Q&A for something like this as well, and I would just say, yes, all memory as well, because I'm not clarifying the fucking 2 or 3 scenes that aren't, you know what I mean? I'm doing the same thing.
And ultimately, like, even if, like, I don't think it matters. Like, I'm personally not that hard-lined about a film being X. Oh, it's going to be this perfect execution of someone's memory, for example, and if it is 98% that. There's like one scene that doesn't fit that. Like, I really don't care.
I wouldn't criticize that film for that sort of a thing. I criticize other films for it because they tell you that everything's a memory, and then sometimes it's like, oh well, nobody saw that thing. Kind of Citizen Kane, but like, it's that sort of a thing. Yeah. I liked it though. I had no problem with the sequence of events or the way in which they were sort of presented. It was nice. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a with on the memory thing. I watched the film and I operated under the understanding that obviously memory is subjective, and then if there's scenes where Sophie's not in the room, she's filling in the gaps.
Sure.
And I like that as well, because even in shots where, for example, Callum is standing up on top of a hill and Sophie's way down the bottom, getting all of the other tourists to sing happy birthday to Callum, there's that push-in shot
Yeah.
that goes closer and closer on his
Yeah.
face.
Yeah.
And Sophie wouldn't have been able to see
What
his expression was. But because she's remembering it, you think that you can remember how people feel, but you were never really in there. So she's filling in gaps, and then there's the scene where immediately afterwards where he's crying on his own in the bathroom, and obviously she's not there, but she's understood that maybe that was even a mistake to sing happy birthday to her dad like that, because he's just finished going over the fact that he was never given something like that, and at the same time he's also not able to give that kind of thoughtful treatment to Sophie because he's battling his own demons.
That was one of the most memorable scenes for me.
That was it's probably my favorite. I gotta say,
because I could have you can read that in like he's all the way on top of this thing for the beginning of it, right, when they're all singing to him. So that's like, first of all, it's like he's like the king, and there's all these like subjects, and they're all looking up to him, which is like something that he probably want from his daughter. It's like to be somebody of admiration. And then you also don't know what's on the other side of the wall, and it's like, is he thinking about jumping?
Yeah.
And then he's also up there like
and
not being happy.
It's like isolating him too from the group, which is not in the group. Beautiful.
And also it's his birthday, and that's like, oh yeah, it's good, it's my birthday. It's also like, oh, I'm getting older now. So maybe it's like, it can be read in a lot of ways. I really like that scene.
Yeah, definitely one of the stronger points in the film. My general thoughts on the film are that I really loved it a lot. In my opinion, I don't feel that it was better than Tar or Banshees. That's where I'm at. But I don't know.
I don't know. That's where I came out of it.
That's where I'm at.
This was like a really well done experience with like excellent acting.
Yeah.
Was it as well shot as Tar, Banshees, or several other films I saw
or like
in the year?
everything?
No. Was it better edited than those films? Not really.
Yeah.
Was it better paced?
Yeah.
No.
But it was so
written?
good.
No.
Yeah.
But it was really good.
Yeah, exactly. And there's nothing wrong with being like one step.
No, exactly. Also, like,
especially on a debut.
Yeah, this is a first feature. Like, this is a really fucking good first feature.
Yeah, absolutely.
Holy shit. Super impressive first feature.
No, for sure. I'm like I was talking to my mate about a boxing match we were watching this morning, and it was a figure of speech he used. He's from Mexico. His name's Juan, and he said, "I think that this boxer's speed is really bad, but that's coming from me, a fucking non-athlete." Is what he said, and that's how I feel poking holes in Aftersun. And obviously, as the viewer, this is what we have to do. And as filmmakers, this is how you break things down.
Sure.
And you look at them, and then you think, how could I do things differently? And that's how you improve.
Are you talking about the pacing of Aftersun?
Like any of the issues that I might have with it.
Oh.
Like I feel like I'm,
My issues that I have with it are like, it's not like they're factually based filmmaking type objective problems.
I have one Conti issue that Charlotte herself
Charlotte
talked. Yeah, she did.
Good on her.
So I'm happy to.
What was it?
That.
It was in one of the opening scenes, Callum is running down to the beach with Sophie, and they jump in the water, and Callum is wearing a cast.
Oh yeah.
And it's a long shot. It's a wide shot, and it's after Callum's already taken his cast off. He's already sorted
movie,
off.
Right?
It's
out of place.
I don't know. Charlotte should have.
Frankie's memory isn't quite all.
Yeah, she was like, look, this is an issue, but I felt like at this part of the film we needed to see them run into the water, and I was like, well, keep it in then.
Yeah, who cares?
No,
there's I don't know. My problems were like, there were some sequences there that I think everybody who seems to have watched the film was like super absorbed in like the way it was edited with like music choices and all this sort of stuff. Some of those, to me, there was part where like some song by Blur came on, and I was like, oh, that's, a good music choice and this whole thing, and we got some shots of like the outside of a hotel room pulling out all this sort of stuff, and I was like, this feels like it should be like engrossing me and I should be more interested here, but now I feel like it's getting pieced together in the editing room a bit. So I don't know if that was like planned, but it felt to me a little bit like there were some passages between the scenes that felt a bit like music was being used to band-aid sequences together with like a selection of other shots. And I don't really think that was the case, because I heard a bunch of press circuit film screening interviews, I guess, where they're like sitting on stage post-screening the film and explaining it, and she seemed like, and I have no reason to doubt her, she seemed like very assured about like it's this shot and then this shot and then this shot. Like it didn't seem like they went to the editing room and pieced it, so they must have planned it that way. I guess some of that sequencing and the layering of music over shots didn't work for me. I wasn't being more engrossed. I was like hoping that they would do another scene next.
I would be interested. I've done zero like research into interviews or watching anything about it, so I don't know. But I'd be interested to know what was intentionally added to the script and what was included because it did actually happen.
Yeah.
You know, things like he's got a cast and he takes it off halfway through. Like, did that just happen because she went on this holiday with her dad and he had a cast?
Do you mean Charlotte in real life?
Yeah.
Oh, she said that it was I think pieced together from multiple holidays that she had. Like we didn't go on one holiday and it was front to back and that was it.
Yeah.
It was like a piecing together of like lots of experiences she had, and some of it was made up and some of it isn't. From the way in which she's speaking about it, it seems to me that people are watching it and going, this is just one-to-one real life experience, and it doesn't seem like that way at all with the way she speaks about it.
No, absolutely
She's like,
not.
I'm sure a bunch of it's fictional, and like she even apparently gave the script to people for script notes and changed scenes. So like it's not like this is not an autobiographical thing.
No, yeah. She mentioned in this podcast episode, it's called the Script Apart podcast, by the way, but don't listen to that one. Listen to our one.
I mean, they really are.
Yeah, right. Yeah, true. Hello.
Don't stop
Thanks for
listening to
being
this
here. No,
podcast.
don't go. Check it afterwards. But I love how we're plugging a much more successful podcast on ours
that does a way better job. Talking
they
about this
actually
movie.
spoke to her.
Yeah.
Oh boy, but she said that it was just it was a nice thing visually that she liked, and she liked that it would give him the opportunity to have to cut it off his own arm because he can't afford to go to a hospital and get them to do it. That was a big part. Yeah.
Is there greater significance here, or is it just sort of colour to his character? And I was like, well, what could this mean? It's like, I thought the same thing. He's too poor to cut it off.
Yeah.
And the other one is that, like, this is a spoiler free. This is
we're
spoiling. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Guys, just go watch it.
One thing I asked myself going to this, I was like, let me see if I can figure out, has he decided to end his life before this holiday, or does this thought come to him on it? And like maybe a third of the way through, I was like, he's already made up his mind. There's no decision here, I don't think.
What gave you that? What?
For me, the real cementing fact was the self-defense lecture with his daughter.
Oh yeah.
Where he was like, this is important. Like, you've got to. And it was like this. For me, it was like, he's got to get this off his chest. He needs to know she'll be okay because he's already decided that he's not coming back.
And he was super, super firm.
And he was really firm, and she's very.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
I don't agree with that.
Let me get back to my point, and then
Yeah.
the other thing that was said to me about the cast, that he'd already decided that he wasn't going to live much longer, is that, like, maybe, and this is my choice I would have made as an actor, like, maybe it's early coming off, and he's like, this is my last holiday with my daughter. I'm not wearing it with a fucking cast on my arm. Like, I don't care if my arm's not going to heal properly.
Right.
I'm not lasting 2 months more.
Sure.
So, like, I thought that was, like, another sort of thing there. Because otherwise the cast is kind of just set dressing. He has it and then he takes it off. But it sort of lends itself to sort of things about him as a person.
Yeah. I think even purely the fact that they are on a holiday and he is so broke makes me think that this is one last hoorah. And maybe affording the
rug,
and affording the goggles is just a matter of getting to the end of the holiday and not having to cut it short. I don't think it's about him being scared of losing his savings. I think he's there, in my opinion.
What made you think that there was different now?
Because I took it as like, I felt like there were a lot of acts in the movie that I was reading two ways, as to sort of do with indifference towards whether he died or not that he was planning on doing it. I feel like it was the sort of thing of like, I might or might not kill myself, but my life doesn't really matter anymore, so I'm going to do a bunch of indifferent stuff. Like when he lied about diving, or like being able to go diving or anything like that. Like, diving is dangerous, and not knowing how to do it or not can result in you dying if you do it wrong. And so there was this feeling of me where it's like, well, he might or might not, but I don't really think that it matters too much to him. But I don't know that that's sure intent, like, all right, now I'm doing it. And so the premeditation of all of the acts in the movie, like the sort of walking into the ocean thing and not knowing if you're going to come out or not, that sort of a thing. If he was doing that, to me, it was just like, well, I'll go for a swim, and if I drown, I don't know that it matters. Or even when he was diving for the mask and went to go get it, he was like, well, let's see how far this mask goes, and if it goes far enough to the point where I drown from trying to get it back, that doesn't really matter. Or and I think the biggest thing for me that was like, when you said before, teaching her about self-defense, like you need to know how to defend yourself and whatnot. Later on in the movie, one of my favorite shots in the movie was when they were on this, like in terms of framing and cinematography, it was when they were on this floaty barge thing in the middle of the ocean. It was all the way back here, and you can like see the whole horizon and landscape and mountains in the background. He said something like, you know, you can always tell me about this stuff, and you can always bring this stuff up to me if it happens, or whenever it happens, or anything like that. And to me, that was like an interesting, like, oh, okay, I'll be here to guide you through your childhood, sort of a thing. And then he wasn't there. Because to me, that was sort of like a future promise that if you were to kill yourself, you would have broken.
Yeah.
The way in which you phrased
I
it
feel
wasn't
like
I
feel like I could have phrased it for like, on this holiday, since we have this time together.
Right.
You can tell me.
Yeah. It seemed like it was a
and since we're out here,
so I don't know. The way in which the line was written was just like, I'll be here to help you through your problems as you get older, for me. That's how I took it when I heard him say it. And I was like, oh, okay. So I felt like he was flip-flopping as the movie was going.
I feel like maybe, well, I wouldn't say he had like a firm plan post-holiday, but I feel like he was definitely, it was present in his mind coming into it, and it sort of covers everything that happens.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe there was a chance that...
I just felt like he was negligent towards suicide or not. Like, it's that whole thing of, like, splurging all that money on that rug, and it was just like, well, I'm out of money anyway, like, fuck it, does it really matter? It was all, like, all of his actions to me were like, if it goes one way or the other, I'm not really fussed.
No, fair enough. I guess I think he knew that he wanted to at some point.
Okay.
You know, and obviously you don't know what the future holds.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Yeah, it could be argued that this is a positive about the movie, and the idea that, like, people are going to come out being like, oh, he wanted to kill himself.
You're not sure.
Or I'm not sure if he did.
That's true. And I'm sure that the daughter, this is the biggest, one of the big things just with the layout and the approach that Charlotte took to telling this story is, it's all just from the mind of old Sophie trying to figure out what exactly happened and what was going on inside his head.
Yeah.
So the fact that it's ambiguous is like, well, yeah, maybe she's trying to figure out if this was pre-planned.
Yeah.
Did he actually swim down that far? Who knows?
Yeah, we don't know.
You know? Yeah. So, yeah, I like that. I like that it can be both sides, but yeah, I don't know. The biggest thing for me is just it's the fact that he went on the holiday at all. Because I feel like if he was truly invested on setting himself up to, you know, get himself out of the financial hole that he's in, you don't, you know, go on a holiday.
Yeah, it's fair, but I mean,
you know,
I don't know that sacrificing all of your money is evidence for actually wanting to commit suicide. Because there are plenty of people who like are suicidal for long periods of time.
Yeah.
And who are depressed for long periods of time, and like will splurge all their money and then make a bunch back and feel better one day and worse the next. And there's like those two opposing scenes in the film of the karaoke thing and the dance thing. And like he doesn't feel up to doing the karaoke because he's just depressed. And then that following scene of him going to the karaoke and dancing. So you can read that two ways, being like, one day he was feeling better about his life, so he did the dance thing. The other day he was feeling worse, so he did the karaoke thing. Or when he was dancing at the end, he was just negligent to embarrassing himself because it didn't matter. His social reputation didn't matter anymore because he was going to die. And then he didn't feel like doing it that time because he was like, oh, I might kill myself tonight. So it was just that sort of like, you can read his feeling about what he's doing, whether he's acting depressed or acting happy, as either indifference or pleasure, or however you want to read it.
Important context, he did like to dance.
Yeah, right, that too.
Yeah.
I think the other one, important thought for me, is like, we can sort of surmise that he is now poor and grew up poor.
Sure.
So it's not a stretch to say that like being responsible with money is something that's known to him, or like was brought up. So like that he's going on a dumb holiday when he can't afford it is entirely plausible with, you know, how I would imagine he was brought up and lives his life.
Yeah.
You know, same irresponsible choices that lead to like a 20-year-old having a relation or having a kid.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
We were talking before about how Charlotte Wells pieced together a bunch of different things to make this movie. I think that's a really good way to approach this kind of like a personal story.
Mm-hmm.
Make it about like expressing like something, like a relationship that is personal to her, but not make it literal around like this one holiday or even two.
Mm-hmm.
You know, open it up to your entire life or childhood, and you know, have a bit more creative freedom. Because I think biopics are so shit, and I think they get hung up on like accuracy.
Well, not anymore. Not as of recent years.
No, not of it. You know, yeah, that's a good point, and that's like a big problem. You can't have what you're dramatically trying to say always flattering to the artist involved if you make it true to life.
You could make it about the artist and not about, you know, their personal life. Maybe you could try that. That might be a good way to do biopics. Sorry, I'm going to shit on. Mm-hmm. Okay, anyhow. But
I wrote a little letterbox review for Oppenheimer, and I specifically mentioned that. I was like, this was a nice change of pace for biopics in recent history.
Good. There you go.
It's much better.
We'll talk about Barbenheimer on this podcast eventually, if any of this goes in the edit.
Yeah.
So you guys know. You said earlier that this script is like an actor's script. Can you define for us what you consider to be an actor's script? Because other actors can have different definitions from you.
Well, okay, yeah, this is an actor's script for me.
Sure, why?
I like characters that are in, like, conflict with themselves, or in, like, if there's something to sort of figure out and sort of do the internal work. That's what I like. And I made another comment on the other podcast I was on where, like, I liked working with you, Noah, because you trusted me to do the work as an actor. I thought that made you a great actor's director because you trusted me to bring my art to the table.
Sure.
But I've seen, like, other people talk about, like, great actors, directors. The director's up in their shit. They're piecing together lines together. Like, the director's very hands-on. And I guess that's the same thing. So this is where my preference comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Scripts with great dialogue and lots of dialogue are good, but I'm not an actor who gravitates towards like doing things or having cool lines.
Mm-hmm.
I like characters and I like people and I like inner turmoil and I like sort of the puzzle. That's why I like both of these characters are fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, Sophie on the cusp of adulthood.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I really saw this on my second watch through. On her coming of age sort of element, there was a definite like sexual angle on it that I missed the first time through.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved the way that was shot. And then, you know, Callum taking his daughter on a holiday where he sort of ends his life shortly after. Like, how did he get to this point? How is he? Which scenes is he masking? Like I asked before, like, has he decided like what he's going to do after this or not? Like, they're really rich questions to ask myself as an actor,
right,
that I get to explore and then inject that into a script. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of work I like doing. That's why I was like, I love this script. Mm-hmm. Like, if someone gave me this script, like, pay dirt. Like, there's so much work. There's so much it tells me, but there's so much for me to do to sort of make it my own and fill in those blanks. And that's the cool work. And
cool.
You know, when a director trusts you to sort of just fill in a scene with like the truth of the character, that's really cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's lots of moments that just play out, and you know, like him dancing at the start when they arrive. Like, I'd love to see how that's written in the script. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it does leave you wondering a little bit, like, because to me this feels a lot like a script that was written very cleanly and very openly. So it was something just like Callum walks down the street, picks up somebody's cigarette. Like, but if I was writing this script, that's what I would have written, unless there was something significant about how it was done that was really important. But like, that's a very simple scene to write on a piece of paper, and then for somebody to walk down the street a certain way and pick it up a certain way.
And Paul Mescal walks down the street in a certain way.
Yeah,
like,
he does. Yeah.
You know, he's sort of blowing off steam. He's looking around.
Yeah.
Like, he's done the work to fill that scene in an interesting way that like tells you his mood. Yeah. That happens after like the singing thing, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Same night.
Yeah.
He's like, don't stay up too late or whatever, and he goes back to his hotel room, but he doesn't. Or she's imagining that he doesn't.
Yeah, he walks into the water.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the shit I write. I love. So write me something like that, please.
There you go.
I got you.
I feel like, yeah, and maybe one of the things that held me back from loving this as much as everybody else did was a bit that I felt like this script, as a script, laid a little bit too much on the side of ambiguity for my personal liking. Because when something becomes a little bit too ambiguous, I am wondering if a scene of somebody walking down the street, picking up a cigarette, running into an ocean, crying in their bedroom, is enough depth of character for me personally as an audience to really care as much as I might have if I had known more about the person. And it's not that I need to know more or that I need to be shown more, it's just that I feel like there's a depth and an exploration of a relationship and of suicide and of either a negligence or a whatever that I have seen explored in other movies about suicide that I feel like is much more rich and in-depth than there is in this. But like what this is going for, I think, in a sense, is being very disconnected from the concept of like she's trying to wrap her head around this whole suicide thing. And so I can understand how her revisiting these memories wouldn't allow for the opportunity to go in depth into these topics. But I don't know that that's a sufficient reason for me to be like, if I'm going to recommend a movie about suicidal ideation, all this sort of stuff, to be like, I have probably a list of another 20 films that I would put before this one as just like being more in depth as to what this is.
I think on the whole the film is less about his suicide and more about her as an adult reflecting on her inability to make sense of what was happening to her father. And there are points where like it's clear to her that she's poor and he's poor and he can't afford things, and she can see he's sad and that kind of stuff, but she never does anything about it because she's a child. But she's an adult now. She's got a baby, and it's sort of her contextualizing that father-daughter relationship that she couldn't understand, and she lost her father after it. Like, that's hugely tragic, and the suicide plays into her sense of guilt that she, it's like survivor's guilt. She wished she could have done something, but she couldn't have because she was just a kid. But that doesn't like remove the guilt she feels from this lovely week they spent together.
I felt like I would have felt like it was more about their relationship and her as a character if the movie didn't end as specifically as it does, and if the movie wasn't so focused on that idea. Because for most of the movie I was sitting there going, what's going on with this guy? Not how is their relationship? And then but by the end and the hammering in of that like sequence with the black light cutting off and cutting on, reaching out to him and this thing,
essentially that scene is what I was describing. This
felt to me more like a character study about him than her, because of how focused it is on him, even though it's through her eyes. Like sometimes you see movies where it's like you have a protagonist who goes through the story, but you don't learn so much about them. Like what I felt like I learned about Frankie was like, oh, she discovered what homosexual relationships were when she was younger as well, like with that whole two boys kissing in the thing. And I was like, that's a really clever way to, because if she had done a scene of two women making out, it would have been two on the nose for when she woke up and did the thing. I was like, oh, that's kind of clever. And like she's discovering this stuff, and she's just seeing how these older kids interact with her and treat her a bit differently and keep her like in or out of the circle, and she's never presumably, doesn't seem like she's had this sort of relationship before with like people of her age, above her age bracket or things like this. And that was all there, but I feel like I got more of an in-depth look at his character than hers and their relationship.
Yeah, no, I definitely see that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have said what I just said after the first viewing, because it centers so much around him. Like maybe that's one critique I could bring to the table, is that balance of narrative could have been shifted a bit to make that stronger. Yeah. But that's just me, because I like that angle on it.
Sure. I don't mind where the narrative would have it could have focused on him or her or both, for all of them equally. I just felt like by the end of it, it was very much about like he's slipping away from her and she wishes she could have done something about it, and that was the central point of the film. I mean, that's what it was really hammering down on. And so when that happens and the end is revealed and all that sort of stuff, I was like, I wish I had cared about him even more than I did, because I did, but there could have been more depth in there for me. That's how I felt by the end of it.
That's interesting. I felt differently.
Okay.
So I'm on the same side of I guess what it sounds like Jack is the idea is that you were saying that you want to see more depth with him and then understand him more.
if that's what the focus of it was.
But I mean, the
which
focus
it was, but I feel like
Yeah.
there
the
was a
focus
shift.
was
I
thinking about him.
Yeah,
So I feel
which
like
is
that
why
can,
I feel like there's the wall there,
can
which is
explain
why it was
Yeah.
that was
that.
okay to me, because it was
It's
like
perfectly,
there are stories where it's like the narrator goes through and he walks you through it, and it's like, you know, Jiminy Cricket and Pinocchio. Pinocchio's not
Sure.
about Jiminy Cricket.
Sure.
Jiminy
Exactly.
Cricket's the
Right.
storyteller.
Sure.
But I don't feel like that's the case with this one. I feel like there's enough of, for me, when I was watching it and I realized that it's all based around scenes where she's not there, it's in her memory, and we get to watch her watching home videos at home and waking up with her girlfriend and doing this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like that was enough for me to be like, okay, so we're now gonna spend this time trying to bridge a gap from her to her father.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to understand the effect that this has on the little girl while she's figuring out her life.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that sense, I felt like the depth that I was looking for was within the daughter, not in the father. Because I feel like if the father remains a mystery, that's okay. Because if you're a person and someone that you know so well commits suicide,
Because he's a
and
mystery to her.
yeah, and you never
Yeah.
truly understand why,
I feel like
that's what people have to,
Yeah.
you know, live with sometimes.
I feel like her barrier of never really being able to talk to him because he was much older and she was much younger
Yeah.
is a perfectly reasonable reason
Yeah.
as to why we didn't get more depth into his character, because she never had that insight or had that depth because she never got to talk to him that way.
Yeah.
But for me, that leaves a lot of ambiguity, and I did not or cannot, from watching it, read that much depth into that ambiguity, where it feels like that all the ambiguous acts that happened in the movie contained that much depth for me to care that much about him. And I
Right.
feel like there are other films that I could say where I'd be like, oh, there's a lot more depth in the ambiguity of this film because there was just more content, or there just weren't sequences that just felt like music layered over shots that I felt like I wished would have been replaced with more introspection or more introspective scenes about something or other, or things like this. We got like little nuggets of things like him being like, my parents forgot it was my birthday, and then my mum slapped me or something and told my dad to drive me to a store to buy a thing. It's like, that's not the whole extent of what we get about him as a character, but that's pretty much what we get about him in terms of like a childhood thing. And I'm not going to say that that's like an expository thing to do in a script, because it's totally a thing that she could have said to him, because it could have been done that way and all that. But I do feel like more scenes of Paul Mescal's character going about his day, doing things, either with her or without her, where they were talking about something a bit more in depth, or doing something that was more related to his childhood, or some more like substantive content stuff, would have held it more for me, rather than playing songs from the 90s and kind of like
Gotcha.
it just didn't enthrall me, that sort of stuff.
I think ultimately the film was somewhat throttled by the concept, you know, in that regard.
Yeah.
And if you, as it currently was, if you leaned into that too much, it probably wouldn't have fit the other narrative stuff.
Absolutely.
So like, you know,
Yeah, that's a good point. I feel like if it would have shifted and then given me some scenes like flashbacks to him as a kid, I would have been like,
Oh,
no,
yeah.
no
I don't
thanks.
like
Yeah, hate it.
Totally,
No,
yeah.
no, the flashbacks would have killed
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
So I've got to give it, it's I have to give it its points for like sticking to it.
No, it's by design. I think a lot
Yeah.
of people look. This is not me criticizing it. This is just my like
how you feel.
how I felt
yeah,
about it, and like that's what it is. Obviously, it seems
people are going to
me-
lynch you for this.
Yeah, I know.
How dare you?
Yeah. and it's-
People have seemed to be reading a lot more emotion and getting a lot more out of this, and a lot more depth in the ambiguity of it than I got out of it.
Well, maybe the people are like me,
Yeah,
where they
that's
just
fair.
love thinking about those things and
Yeah.
you project onto it.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone
Yeah, totally.
does that all the time anyway.
I think that was a big thing, is like the projection, because it's 100% what I did. Like, I'm not going to go into it at all on this podcast, but there were times when I was a kid, and I'm sure we all had times where you see your parents going through something, and it made me think about those particular times.
Yeah.
And so I was in it
Yep.
completely. Like, I felt like I was 100% there. And I have to credit that to the ambiguity, because of what it did for me emotionally.
Sure. That would be a reason for me to say, like, oh, this is one of my favorite films of the year.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be a
One
reason
of
for me
the
to say
best.
it was one of the best.
And
There's a difference between
I can totally
me
agree
loving
with you
it
there.
and
Oh, yeah.
quality.
Yeah,
That's how I
absolutely.
feel.
100%,
My favourite films
yeah.
are not always the best films.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
always like personally related.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, Oppenheimer, my favorite Nolan film. I wrote in my review, there are probably 12.5 close-ups that are out of focus. And we can credit that to it being low light and shot on film, whatever.
Yeah.
It shitted me off so much when I watched it, but like what that film did for me emotionally is a different discussion.
Yeah, there you
So
go.
sometimes you just get, both.
I mean, and then the other consideration is filmmaking so expensive. Sometimes like you've just got mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
There's- you can't be CGIing out all those mustaches.
Yeah,
Sometimes
right.
you just gotta, like, the film's got to be released. You got no more money.
Yeah.
It just gets done. And
Yeah.
No, it's true. And like Synecdoche has that one shot of Sammy jumping where the green screen is
Yeah.
like a hair dodgy.
Or the doubled, tripled, quadrupled warehouse. where
Yeah,
it's just like
and then like
scenes of people.
all
It's
that
like, that looks like
all that
shit, bro.
digital camera blur like kind of
Yeah.
looks like
It was 2008.
yeah, of course, yeah, of course.
You know what had shit CGI? Nope.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, Nope had some
That-
iffiness.
Which part?
The monkey?
The monkey looks awful.
The monkey looks terrible.
Well, I mean,
I mean, obviously, all the
He had
Planet of the
to
Apes
do-
films
yeah.
have top-notch, like,
Yeah, that
monkey
was-
CGI.
Yeah.
Because that's what you're there for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
they had to just go and get Andy Serkis. They just had to
would've been
bite the
the way to
bullet.
go.
And
Yeah.
Get the master. Yeah.
I think the monster, the alien, gets away because it's so like, or it's not like regular looking when it does
Yeah.
come out, and it's just a cloud. It's not that hard to.
Fantastical effects. Humans got nothing to compare. to.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally. It's a good way to-
That paper mache-esque ribbon alien looks. Doesn't it? I've seen 80 of those at the zoo, and it doesn't look.
Yeah,
like that.
right.
no.
Yeah. My pet one doesn't look
No,
anything like
exactly,
it. Yeah. No, Nope's great. I'll just say as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think Nope's sick.
If there were any visual effect or corrections in this that were actually done, I didn't see them. So
No.
if anybody did VFX on this, I didn't check the credits list, but they did a great job.
Yeah.
I didn't see anything.
Could have VFX'd out that cast.
Yeah. Apparently she was like, do I try and she said no.
No, fuck it. Yeah.
They're so far away. It's like, no,
No.
not going to track it to a running arm with motion blur. There's an interesting, I'll bring this up just since we're talking about like things that maybe we wouldn't have like added to the story or taken away from the story. Some early drafts of the script apparently had an older Sophie walking through the memory physically with a younger Sophie.
Wow.
Like holding hands
Oh.
on the holiday. And I heard that immediately and I was like, thank God
No way.
you did not put that in the script.
Old boy remake type thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly that.
He's like,
And she just said, and then the script started to get mature and I cut
Yeah.
the scene. And I was like, yeah, absolutely.
There's a show I watched called The Gardeners.
Mm-hmm.
Olivia Colman and David Thewlis.
oh yeah.
Oh, I'm sold.
It's good.
What a,
It's
what a
fun.
cast, yeah.
But it's got more of like a campy, fun tone.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
they commit some crime, and then there's like scenes of the detectives talking them through it, like explaining them to them, and they do that recreation thing and they walk through it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I think that stuff's cool when everything else supports it. But like, if we take the film as it was, with that tone, and you do that,
Exactly.
absolutely not.
Yeah, it would have killed that.
Oh,
That's one thing I gotta. The film has the most consistent tone throughout. It's so there's not really a piece out of place.
Inconsistent tone really upsets me. I saw some theatre recently, and like there was some comedy inserted in where there should not have been, and I was just seething. Like, I hate that
Oh
stuff.
yeah, Cocaine Bear is the greatest crime against tone that I've seen in recent history. I could not tell you what
didn't
that
know
film
what
was
it
trying to be.
No.
There were like emotional family scenes followed by hilarious cocaine killing scenes, and then they were mourning the person that got killed hilariously. It's like
How long have we been going?
we're at about an hour.
Jack's got a shitload of notes over there.
These
yeah.
are just character notes. Like, and then I asked myself the question about when he made the decision, and then just like the other thing, implication of the daughter getting on with the dad better. I thought that was an interesting point that like I decided in my Jack actor brain that Sophie had a better relationship with her dad for whatever reason. It just felt like that was the case, and I was like, that's interesting.
At a certain point in the film, do you mean?
Oh no, I got a sense like he asked her if this is how I piece things together as an actor. The line is, we're not getting on with your mum, implying that she has problems with her mum, and that he doesn't, and he's asking about it, that he's closer to her.
Right.
Yeah, right.
So like on one hand, that could be like they're closer, the father and the daughter.
Sure.
Also, like, she clearly lives with the mum all the time.
Yeah.
From that.
Yeah.
So like, you're going to clash with the parent you see every day. The dad parachutes in.
Yeah.
He splurges a bit. He's the favourite.
Yeah.
Mum's there sending you to bed, taking you to school. I guess that's just more thoughts on how their dynamic is coloured.
It's interesting too, because he keeps mentioning that he's gonna buy the apartment with the spare bedroom so she can come and visit, and I think at one point he's said it a couple times and she calls us bullshit and says, like, you keep saying that, but where is it?
And then, like, after the singing, he's like, I'll get you singing lessons if you want. And she fucking claps back at him.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, stop promising things you can't afford.
Yeah.
That's a great exchange, man, because he must be just, I guess, in that instant, you've got to have a high level of insecurity to want to critique your daughter on how she sings a karaoke song for fun.
He really takes a swipe at her.
Yeah, it's like, and obviously that's just it, as usually is the case when people insult other people. It's just a reflection of him, because he was, too scared or self-conscious to get up in that particular moment. That was interesting. Pretty rough, that exchange. And then I think she just goes to bed, or goes and hangs out with that kid that she met at the arcade, and then he goes to bed or something like that. She cuts the night off early.
Yeah. He says he wants to go up. I think he says, like, come to bed, and she's like, no, I want to stay here for a bit or whatever.
Yeah.
I think.
And
so
then he leaves. Yeah.
I want to ask you guys, it's pretty, simply shot. There's a lot of handheld, nothing too flashy, long shots and slight zooms. There's one really flashy shot at the end where it pans from the
360.
Yeah, the 360 from the airport to the bedroom, back to the airport, looking the other direction.
Chantal Ackerman, yeah.
What were your thoughts about the inclusion of that shot?
That's sick.
Is this like final shot? That one?
Yeah.
Where he's there with the camera? Yeah, I thought it was great.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I thought it was, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what to... It would have taken a lot of planning. It was very smooth.
Yeah.
It was I thought tonally it was really nice.
I guess what I was plumbing for, because it's so like out of sync with everything else.
Yeah, gotcha.
And it is like really flashy and impressive.
Whether it was inconsistent, maybe?
Yeah, if you had any thoughts on it.
No, I was happy that the film did some really super impressive cinematography, because for the rest of the film I was sitting there like, there's so many long lenses being used, and I don't feel like there was a whole lot of intent in the framing of things, which is something that I wouldn't critique every movie for, but I would critique this movie for, because I felt like the selection of like different lenses and using them didn't, for me, add anything to how the story was being told. Like, I would have rather have the film had more of like a consistent visual style, which I felt like it didn't really have. So when I saw glimpses of like really great cinematography or really good blocking, like him at the top of the hill, for example, thing I thought was really good. They could have shot it a bit better, but like in principle, like blocking and cinematography and production design are all very linked, and so you have to put them all the same. You have to think about them all at the same time to do it well. And the shot of him in the barge, that shot at the end, the 360 shot, like things like that, I was like, that's really impressively done. And you don't have to shoot a movie with like crazy camera movement for it to be good, but you do have to shoot a movie, to me, because I value cohesion as something, visually, sonically, filmically, as a whole as something. And when I see a film and it doesn't really have a sort of visual cohesion to it, I am not as impressed by it than other movies that manage to do that with something. Unless you want to shift between styles because you're like Edgar Wright, but that's a style within itself to do that, to use all the different lenses. So yeah, I really enjoyed that shot, and I thought Chantal Ackerman, and then I heard her speak at Q&As, and she was like, and that shot at the end was inspired by Chantal Ackerman. I was like, aha! We both went to film school, so...
Who is Chantal Ackerman?
Chantal Ackerman is maybe arguably the most important female filmmaker, arguably, she made Jean Dielman.
Oh, I've seen Jean.
Yeah. Jean Dielman's super significant because she was 26 when she made it. And
Good God.
Yeah. And it's like one of the only... It's a film that commits to boredom as an emotion, which is just about the ballsiest fucking thing. and had never been done before properly, really. You know, despite how many people hate on me for enjoying Tarkovsky. Boredom is not intended by every filmmaker, but it was in that film.
Yeah,
And
that's
so,
a pretty big slam on any other film.
but that's the whole point. It's like, we're going to exhaust you because that's how this character feels.
Yeah.
That's the intent, and it does it so well. Chantal Akerman's a film nerd's sort of person. Yeah, it was no surprise to me that, like, when that popped up at the end, I was like, oh yeah, someone's been to film school. Someone's done some research, you know.
Reminds me of seeing Vortex by Gaspar Noé, which is an unpleasant experience because it commits to, like, putting you in the life of living with dementia.
Right.
And it's unpleasant.
Right. There you go.
Yeah. I loved it. I was on board. Yeah. But, like, if you don't want to watch that...
I have dementia.
Watching this old French couple potter around in this, like, rabbit warren of an apartment for several hours is exhausting.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Gotcha.
Jeez. I feel like the cinematography... There are shots that I was very impressed by, and then there were shots like, okay, well, two people lying down having a conversation, you can put a long lens here and you can see both of them, and it doesn't blow me away, but that's a nice place to put the camera just so that you can let the shot run for so long.
Sure.
I felt like the cinematography lended itself so well to keeping the pacing consistent and slow and giving us shots that you could hold on for a long time.
Okay.
Like, well, I mean, this is one of the shots that did really impress me, but it was the shot with there was the mirror, the camera, and the TV in the room, and we were watching all three. Yeah, that's honestly a bad example of what I'm talking about.
You mentioned that on the podcast.
I did.
So when I went and watched the movie, I was looking for that shot, and then I saw it, and I was like, that's a good shot. Yeah. I've seen other things blocked that way with mirrors in rooms where I felt like I was much more impressed than that. Right. But it was clever.
I feel like in the context of that film, because it's all like memory subjectivity plus she's watching home videotapes, you get a chance to watch all three happening at the same time. Sure. I feel like the story elevated that shot as a decision.
It was cool. Yeah. I think I liked that shot's concept more than its framing and execution.
Yep, that's fair.
It was an awkward framing.
Yeah.
Like, for sure.
Yeah, no, I didn't love the framing of that.
Yeah.
One of the sequences I really did like how it was shot, even though I felt like it maybe could have been even better shot than it was when he was on the other side of the door in the bathroom getting his cast off and she was sitting on the other side of the same
split
wall.
Down the middle.
And like, that's a very basic, simple thing I've seen in movies 1,000 times, but I think it was something about the variation in lighting between the lighting in the bathroom and the lighting in the living room that broke up how that was being perceived, and the idea that she wouldn't want to walk in there even though she knows the door's open, so you can get away with the door being open so you can get that shot. Stuff like that. I was like, oh, that's cool. I like that one. Yeah.
Yeah, it was nice as well. Like it was very cold always in the bathroom, and then there was this warm hotel light with some maroon rugs on the bed. Yeah. Yeah. Super nice, and it's obviously like this is not exactly what I meant, but I was getting a little bit of like ignorance versus the person who's actually going through it, you know.
All filmic ideas are great until somebody explains them.
Yeah, right. I got midway through that and I was like, now I'm bored with it. I was like, it feels nicer to look at than it is to explain how it looks. Yeah, of course.
That's it. That's just natural. Doesn't mean it's a bad shot.
No, of course not. No. Of course not. That's just anything.
Yeah.
Here we are at the end of the conversation. I think we've run out of steam here. I don't think there's any other way we could pull this apart. We've had a great time talking about Aftersun. I think we all wholeheartedly recommend seeing it.
Yeah, watch it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely one of the better films. I think really aspirational for a first-time director. Yeah. If you can.
Yeah.
This is a debut picture. It's ridiculous.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Unreal. Alrighty, well, go see it, and thanks for listening, guys.
See ya.
See ya.
Bye.